What's going on, everybody? It is your boy Zamboni. I am an astrologer and musician, and it is time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. As always, I thank y'all so much for being here. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Thank you for sending me a tip via Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, because you know that really does make this whole thing possible. It makes it possible for everybody to get these free forecasts and all the rest of this free content that I do with the podcast and the music and all the rest. If you want to check out the music on Spotify, Tidal, Pandora, check out the song Can't Help Myself. There's going to be a new song out pretty soon. We hope as soon as these retrogrades get done. Look forward to that. I thank all y'all for checking out the Patreon, where you can get an Astro Basics course if you want to help yourself to understand a little more about what YouTube astrologers are talking about, get an election report to time your life, etc., etc. Thank y'all for doing all of those things. Let's talk about the astrology of the week ahead. So this week we have the main thing that I'm looking at this week is Mercury is going to be stationing direct. So for mad long, for days, for weeks, for months even, I've been talking about retrospective. I've been talking about we got to look back at what's been going on from 2008, from 2018, etc., right? We've been having Mars retrograde in Gemini for mad long. Mars stationed retrograde in Gemini back in October. October 30th is when that retrograde station happened. Now, this last week we did have a direct station from Mars. So Mars is going to start moving forward again, but like not quickly, you know, like we can think about like a train, you know, like how long would it take a train to stop moving and then move back in the other direction, right? So there's this long slowdown and then a stop, that's the station. And then how long does it take to actually get some momentum moving in the other direction, right? That's the spot that we're at right now. And we don't even have proper locomotion because we can see that Mercury, who rules Gemini, is also retrograde. Now this week we are going to see the station and Mercury is going to start moving forward again. Same situation. Now Mercury is, you know, like now we're talking about like the weight of a car or truck or something like this rather than the weight of a train, right? It happens much quicker, but same kind of process is going to be going on here. It's not like we're going to see a like zippy Mercury by the end of the week, right? We're still in this process of like really digging deep into the evaluation of what's going on here. I keep talking about planning things, you know, planning for contingencies and all that sort of stuff, right? You know, and like it's been so difficult to get stuff moving, to actually get stuff happening at all. This past week, I gave up a little bit. I put procrastination on the schedule. It was on my to-do list so I could check that shit off because I just knew that I wasn't actually gonna get anything done. I wasn't actually getting anything done. I was just kicking myself for not getting things done. So I was just like, fuck it. This week it's not gonna happen, right? So there's been a lot of that kind of situation. I've been sort of thinking of that as giving it time to steep. You know, like I've had a lot of these kinds of things where I'm like, despairing or, you know, like freaking out about how's it going to work and where's the money going to come from, et cetera, like all the things, whatever it is that, you know, we are sort of in the throes of navigating, right? Then all that stuff and trying to like figure out how to make it all work and all that, like, this past week, I didn't expect solutions to happen. This coming week, still don't really expect solutions to happen, right? What I talked about, I don't know, 2-3 months ago was that throughout this whole Mars retrograde, we've also got a square to Neptune. We don't get good information throughout this whole process. We don't understand what's really happening, but sometimes you got to move forward anyway. Sometimes you know, like even without an understanding, you got to try some stuff and see what happens, right? Part of what I think is, you know, rather than, and Mercury retrograde in a yin sign really speaks to this in a pretty important way also. So rather than like trying to just like keep reading and keep like getting all the logical understanding of stuff, like there's a fair amount of sleeping on it and just letting it steep, letting it turn into something when you weren't paying attention to it. There's a fair bit of that's going on here as well, right? So now's a great time to get some sleep if you can, right? Like once things get moving and start moving forward, like there's a fair bit a fair bit of like commotion and ruckus on the way in 2023. We're not at that part yet, but you know, there might be a time when we look back on this moment and be like, you know, I kind of like not having to hustle all the damn time, or like, you know, like, because like this Mars still feels urgent a lot of times, right? Especially if you got something at the beginning of Gemini or at the beginning of one of the mutable signs. And that's one of the things that we're looking at here as well, right? Mars retrograde has been going back and forth through Gemini, and therefore activating all these mutable placements. If you have stuff in Gemini, in Pisces, in Virgo and Sagittarius, if you have anything in those, any planets in those signs, then that stuff has been really getting worked up and just seeing some action, right? Well, after Mars moves out of Gemini, then Saturn is going to move into Pisces and is going to still activate all that stuff, right? So really what we're seeing with this Mars retrograde in Gemini is sort of opening the door here, right? Like if Mars retrograde has demonstrated that the plan isn't really working, that things are going awry, that your idea of how it was going to go was not really how it was actually going to go, and then you had to reevaluate, you had to rework your plan and all this kind of stuff, right? Now, as we see this Mars moving forward, then it's time to like try some of that stuff, right? We try some stuff out. Again, there might be some problems, some stuff might, right? This is why we plan for contingencies and all this sort of stuff. Then as Mars finally moves out of Gemini in March, that's happening, right? We still got two months and change left. Once that happens, then Saturn, also in March 7th, is going to move into Pisces, and then bring Saturn, right? Bring the weight, bring the burden, the responsibility, the obligation, the challenges, the obstacles, etc., etc. Saturn likes to talk about longevity and endurance, right? If it's real, it can take the pressure. And so Saturn is going to apply pressure on this new plan that you've been working on since October of last year, right? Of 2022. Since October of 2022, you've been seeing stuff falling apart, not working very well. Got to rework the plan. Let's try it out. Do some little stuff, and then Saturn comes in to apply some pressure. Now, I've been talking to a lot of people who got like their Saturn return coming up, right? Folks who got Saturn in Pisces, right? And so if you got Saturn in Pisces, then you're looking toward this Saturn return. That's about to be a big deal for you. And probably Mars retrograde has already triggered some of the stuff that is going on there, or not necessarily a Saturn return, right? But like anyone who's got big mutable placements, that stuff has already been broken open. And so now it's going to be about actually trying the stuff and seeing how it actually works. One of the things that I really I continue to come back to is when you're trying to figure out what's been going on and how to plan appropriately, then operating from a place of non-judgment and compassion is very important. It's a little bit like, you know, like this past week, I knew that I wasn't going to get anything done. And so I just let that happen, right? You know, I could have kicked myself all week. And I did. I kicked myself a fair number of times, right? But for not getting shit done, and I usually try to get a bunch of shit done and generate more content and all this sort of stuff, and it wasn't happening. And so what I ended up spending that time doing was just looking at what is happening here, just what is happening at all. And if I can get a good idea of what is happening, then that can help me to generate a map that I can then navigate with a plan. I can chart a course through that. If I know that part of the reason why I'm not getting stuff done is because of X thing. Maybe it's an emotional thing. Maybe it's a technical thing. I don't have the proper supplies to do the thing. Maybe it's a social thing. Maybe I needed to ask for help. Maybe asking for help generated problems. Like whatever the situation is for you, right? If I can get an idea of what is actually happening here, then I can plan for those things and move and work on that moving forward. So I don't necessarily have to be mean about it. I don't have to hurt myself around this, right? But definitely some long-term thinking is a big deal here. We see the sun moving into Aquarius this week. Venus is there. Venus is going to conjoin Saturn. This is real good Saturn stuff. Looking into the long term, some long-term plans are a very good idea at this time. I love the long term. I love the long form. That's why I always run out of time. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that you have enjoyed this. If you like the long form stuff that I do, check out the podcast and all the rest. Zamboni Form.